Hey everyone, welcome back to the Experience Freedom Sessions with Cory and Dave. Today, we've got a really good one for you. 5 great reasons to take your e-bike wine tasting. That's right, there's probably no better way to go vineyard hopping than on the back of a dosed electric bike. Now before we get too far, you might be thinking, do riding a bike and drinking wine really mix? Well, that's a great question. In fact, it's common to spit out wine during tasting. For one, it'll help you keep your palate fresh for the next stop. And 2, I think you'll be thanking yourself by the time you pedal up to that 4th winery.
Some of these days you will miss me, honey. Some of these days you gonna feel so lonely. You gonna miss my hugging, oh, you gonna miss my kiss.
At the end of September, we were fortunate to have a beautiful stretch of summer weather in the forecast, so we loaded up the e-bikes on the back of the dosed funmobile and headed 5 hours east of Vancouver to British Columbia's South Okanagan Valley, near the towns of Oliver and Osoyoos. Dave and I spent 5 glorious days riding through the subregions of the South Okanagan, specifically the Gold Mile Bench and the Black Sage Bench. This part of the country is about the hottest, driest place in Canada, a veritable desert landscape that's home to rattlesnakes, sagebrush, and some of Canada's biggest red wines, varietals like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, and one of our faves, Cabernet Franc. In fact, the New York Times once called it the Napa Valley of the North. We had the good fortune to set up home base at Bill Eggert's winery, Fairview Cellars. Our first morning, I jumped out of bed and headed out to the vineyard, camera in hand to try to capture some of that beautiful early Okanagan light. To my surprise, there was 10 pickers busily plucking Merlot off the vines. And Bill, well, he came out shortly after. Boys, you're in luck, we're crushing Merlot. It's always a great experience spending a few hours with an icon like Bill, and though he keeps his vineyard secrets tucked under his bed, you can get a bit of an understanding as to how he can produce such big, juicy, powerful reds that he's known for. With hundreds of boutique wineries scattered up and down the valley, it's an ideal place to hop on your e-bike and cruise. And if you're not so much into wine, well, there's lots of craft cideries, breweries, and distilleries springing up, so there's certainly no need to go thirsty in the Okanagan. Our guest house at Fairview overlooked the vineyard, which made it really easy to recharge our batteries at night. Our biggest wine tasting days had us riding as much as 40 to 60 kilometers up and down the benches on either side of the valley, logging about 1,000 feet of vertical or more as we searched out the best of the best. But always, at the end of the day, setting sun, back home, the vineyard, kicking back in the patio, and sipping Sauvignon Blanc.
So here we go, our top 5 reasons to take your e-bike wine tasting. Number 1, the speed. A car is just a bit too fast to really take in the scenery. I mean, the mountains and lakes, the fruit and the vines, it's all such a feast for the senses. You hate to miss out on any of it. And reason number 2, the long distances. The wineries in the Okanagan, like many wine regions all around the world, they're pretty spread out. As Cory said, our biggest day had us riding more than 50 kilometers. That would have been a lot more manageable if it weren't for all the hills.
Oh, well, we like to waste our time singing silly songs. We like to hang around when the sun is gone.
And that leads us to number 3, hills, hills, hills. Some of the best land for growing grapes just happens to be on steep hillside slopes. There were times we were climbing grades of at least 15%.
We live in a swamp, we find our consolation in the 30s song.
Number 4, you guessed it, carrying cargo. You know at Dose, we love to carry cargo on a bike. You've traveled all this way, you've tasted all those amazing wines. It'd be a crying shame not to take a bunch home. Carrying a case or 2 of wine on a Dose bike's a piece of cake. Now, we use panniers on this trip, but a trailer would be ideal too. And finally, the number 5 reason to e-bike around wine country is so that you can show up looking fresh at the next wine tasting. Since the Okanagan is such a hot valley, I mean the thermometer easily tops 100 degrees in the summer, so it doesn't take much to turn into a hot, sweaty mess out there. And there you have it, folks, e-biking and wine tasting. There's never been a better pairing.